Welcome to the first of a series of videos where we're going to be talking about the ISMM Level 5 Diploma in Sales and Marketing. The particular unit that we're going to talk about over the next 4 to 6 weeks or so is Unit 501, which is Understanding and Developing Customer Accounts. Today, I just simply want to talk about the Decision Making Unit, often known as the DMU. Now, the DMU was devised by Philip Kotler. He's a marketing author in the US, and it really involves a business-to-business context whereby it's the people or group of individuals who are responsible for making a buying decision. And Kotler identified there were 6 different roles. These were the initiator, influencer, buyer, user, gatekeeper, and decider. So what I'd like to do is take a look at each one and really try to relate it to an example that we had as a training organization. It was a property developer, and very much they were looking for a sales training provider. So hopefully by thinking about the different areas of that business, we can relate to what Kotler meant in terms of the decision-making unit. So the initiator. Well, this was the group sales director. The group sales director came from a background that was very much a sales process driven organization. And he was frustrated by the lack of sales process in the new organization. So he decided that we have a problem. Salespeople aren't following a structure and we need a sales process. So he was the initiator of the whole project. He then approached the deciders. Now, the deciders were a number of group sales directors across the business who he had to approach and gain their agreement that they also felt that there was a problem, and they had to define very much what the outcome was that they were looking for. So they were involved not only at the beginning, but they also were involved in the sign-off at the very end of the project. The next area is the influencer. Based on the discussion that the regional sales directors and group sales director had, they then put together a steering group, which involved the L&D department, both director and the trainers. It involved the group sales director, but it also included a number of other people within the organization, such as the sales managers. So we started to come together as a group, or they did, to start to really define exactly what the key criteria was that they were looking for. And the successful organization, which was us, we then became part of that influencing group. So the influencer can be an individual or a group of individuals, as indeed a lot of these different area of Kotler's DMU are. The next, the user. Well, in this situation, it was very much the salespeople. So a lot of discussion was had with salespeople. What was the challenge? What were the challenges that they often found in their marketplace? What was the sales process that were being used in various different parts of the country? And when it was all put together and we put our training material together and content, it was then rolled out to a pilot of salespeople to ensure that they felt that the process that we had devised was fit for purpose. So they were very much the users trying to understand exactly, does this work for us? The next area was the gatekeeper. Now, in sales, we often think about the gatekeeper, who are the people that are preventing us from doing our jobs and getting to speak to the decision makers. In this context, it's very much the individual who is coordinating a lot of the communication between different parts of the decision-making unit. In this situation, it was the group sales director's PA. So we were very much coordinating with them. They would then speak to the various different salespeople, sales managers, L&D department, etc. And then, as I said earlier, it all came back together at the very end to speak to the decider, for those people to sign the project off. And lastly, the buyer. Now, who's the buyer? Well, in the Kotler situation, the buyer is the person or department that pays for whatever the decision is being based upon. So in this situation, it was coming out of the learning and development budget. So I guess you could argue that the learning and development director was the buyer in this situation. Even though he wasn't the ultimate decider, he was very much the buyer. And all of our invoicing, etc., used to go through this one individual's department. Now in SSP, we often simplify exactly what you need to identify as a salesperson in a decision maker. And there, we always say there are pretty much three things that need to be there. That needs to be money. Do they have access to budget? We need to have authority. Can they sign it off? And do they understand the need? Now, in larger organizations, you start to expand this. So you could have, do they have the money? Do they have equal authority? And do they understand the need? And what I like about the Kotler model in terms of the DMU is that you can start to take each of these three areas, money, authority, need, and start to relate it to each of the different levels and the different titles within the decision-making unit. So of course the decider, they're often the people that will have money, they will often have the authority, but depending on the positions in the organisation, they may not necessarily have the need. The users, well, they'll certainly understand the need because they're the ones who are at the coalface, but they probably don't have the money and they certainly don't have the authority. The buyer, well, the buyer is probably given the money in terms of a budget, but they may not have the ultimate authority and they may only understand the need by what's being told by the users. And in terms of the gatekeeper, they may not understand the need, they may not have the authority, they may not have the money, but there's still an individual that you should still very much network with because they could be the linchpin between the different organizations and making the whole thing run smoothly. So understanding money, authority, need is still vital in terms of the way that you approach the decision-making unit. Once you've done that, you really need to start mapping out the organization. And again, we simplify it to approver, buyer, and influencer, but there's nothing stopping you taking the 6 Kotler different roles and spreading that across the company. And one of the best things that you can do here is start to map out exactly how much involvement you've had with the different areas. How much contact. No involvement, you leave the box blank. You met them once, one line going across. You've met them a few times, you fill in half of that box. You met them lots of times and in depth, you truly fill in the whole of that box because that means that you really have a great relationship with that individual. And what you start to do is then map out the different parts of the organization, understanding where they are in terms of Kotler's titles. And what you start to get is a real picture of how spread you are as an organization or as a salesperson in terms of being involved with this company. And what often happens when we do this, we find that we normally have a silo whereby we very much have networked well and we understand exactly what their needs are, they know us, we have a good relationship and all is great. The challenge with that, we often neglect both sides of the organization. So we could be in with sales, but we neglect learning and development, or we don't understand the procurement department, or we have a great relationship with the procurement department, but learning and development and sales are neglected. So depending on the different products that you're selling and depending on the departments you need to speak to, don't just get trapped into working with the one silo. Very much spread yourself across the organization. The other big mistake that happens is that we tend to work below the line. So we work at a management level, but we do not truly get into above the line, which is very much the director level. So it's great that you spread yourself across the organization, but getting to director level could be the key. What you don't want is a decision is made at director level and they didn't even know of you and you lost the deal because quite frankly you weren't pitching high enough. So, in summary, the decision-making unit. there are the 6 key areas, the 6 key roles that you need to identify whenever you're working with an organisation in a specific project or scope or opportunity. And then simply you need to map out that organisation and very much network across all of the decision-making unit. So I hope that you've enjoyed today's video, and next time we'll be talking about some other areas of Unit 501. Thank you for watching.